Okay, this is an oversewing machine that was just repaired. I already started sewing and it's all threaded. They want to be able to sew a 4-inch book. You have to make sure you keep your foot off the thread tensioning pedal when you're sewing, because if you step on it, then you're going to lose all the thread tension. I pulled the book out a little bit, I let it drop, and then I set it against the gate. I joggle it a little bit. Now as I'm sewing, I could see that all of the threads are catching. I'm using 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm using 12 needles and punching. So I'm sewing right on the edge. Obviously, this is not a real book. It's just for testing. On this particular machine, we did a full repair. By that I mean we removed all the punches, needles. We removed the thread tensioning mechanism, cleaned it up, removed all the dirt that was on there, and put it all back together again, replaced any parts that were worn, inspected all the parts. Now a repair like this normally takes longer than just putting all the parts in there. But the machine is sewing perfect. We just did this book over here. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And it's perfect. This is what the sewing should look like. Good sewing, anyway. I'm going to take a close-up of that later so you'll be able to see it. So you take like a quarter's worth of material and you put it in. I like to jog the book a little bit and then set it against the gauge. Now sometimes you may get a broken thread for whatever reason. If that's the case, what they do is they open the machine and they fix it and they close the machine back up again and start sewing. Especially when you're doing a thick book like this, like a 4-inch book. I mean, if you get a couple of misses, it's not really going to affect the integrity of the sewn book. But it's nice when you have a machine that it catches 100%, like this is doing right now. you see the gap on there? There's like a half-inch gap, and that's controlled by the brake. You need that gap so that you can insert the material. This whole mechanism, the leather pad, that has to be working perfectly, because otherwise you're going to have drag on there, and you're not going to be holding the book properly. And if it's too tight, you could end up even breaking. There's like half a dozen different parts. If the mechanism here is too tight, then you could end up breaking it. Missed in the center there, pulled out. Okay, it's okay. There should be like two little pigtails from the shuttle. You don't really want it going in all the way, because what could happen is you could end up these two. You could end up pulling the shuttle. That's what happened that time. I have to loosen up the thread tension just a hair on that, on these. Now when you start sewing, you go 3 times, and when you finish sewing, you do the same thing. So we go 1, 2, 3. And this is what it looks like. Over here, missed a couple of times, 2 times. In this one, lost it all together. But there's enough there to hold the book. I mean, stronger than the page. And normally they apply some adhesive. They put it on the clamp, and they, with a brush, they put some adhesive, TVA. So this is the thread. Here's the needle. So there's a long groove on the needle. You feel it right there. That faces forward. So I just take it and I slide it up into the hole. There's enough room in there. And now I hold it, and the thread faces back and that groove faces forward. I slide it in, slide it down, and then I tighten the screw. This feels very tight. Too tight. It should be like this. So right now I'm checking the tension. Too tight. Too tight. Way too tight. This is good. This is good. Okay, so we have one here that was real tight, and the two center ones were too tight. Were tight as well. This is the one. These two here. So now I go on the other side. Okay, so the thread tension is here. So we're talking about these two here. This one. And this one. And there was this one here. Checking them again, make sure they're okay. They should be about the same. The two center ones, you use those to control the little pig's tail, or pig's ear, sorry. Okay, this is a little on the tight side. So they go this way. Yeah, been working on these machines for like 20 years. I noticed that there's been a glut in the used market, and they normally go for a couple of $1,000s. But they usually need major repairs. I mean, what I found is that a lot of times they take two machines, and from those two they make a machine, swapping parts out, and it becomes a nightmare repairing those machines, because a lot of these parts, all the major parts, they were pinned at assembly. So the pinholes, they almost line up, and when they're put together, the machines don't work. So the first thing I ask is, have any of the parts come from other machines? And then what I do is I check them to make sure that they line up properly, and if they don't, then I remove the pins that are on there and I repin. according to the manufacturer's specifications. But like I say, you run into the situation a lot, being that you could pick up these machines for a couple of $1,000 and a new machine going for 50. So the tension was on the tight side on one of them, and that's the reason why the thread broke. Now with these, I notice a lot of times there's grooves in here. Oops, having an orange. There's grooves in here, and the thread catches, and it breaks. And also grooves here. Whoops. Grooves on the shuttles, and also grooves on the shuttle thread guides. The thread is extremely abrasive, and over the years it cuts a groove on the steel. I mean, I'm not really making a book. We're just sewing to check the machine out. On the book is so thick it overhangs, so we have this plate, and we make it in different widths so that the book rests perfectly flat on the table. Now when you're making a real book, you first line it up and then you bring it up, especially if it's going in this direction, because when you only have like a couple of sections, you're going to end up smashing them like I just did. So when you sew in a real book, down, then you bring it up. I mean, now it's going to start going this way. Once you build it up to like 3/8 or 1/2 inch, then you're okay. It pushes the book. A lot of time and patience to tweak the machine. You know, to do all the tweaking in as far as the you know, getting it to sew perfect. I said, you go a quarter's worth when you're sewing them. So, like about a 1/16 of an inch. Back in the old days, they used to make a sectioner that they would actually apply adhesive to the book and run it through the sectioner to make sections for the operator so that they wouldn't have to be picking up a quarter's worth of So I'm looking this way and I'm making sure that all of my threads are catching and that the sewing is dead on. And if it's not, if I break a needle or a thread, I open the machine up, especially on a thick book like this, and I do the repair. Replace the thread, needle, or punch, whatever. I mean, you shouldn't be breaking needles and punches on this machine. If you are, there's something wrong. Probably requires some maintenance. If the thread tension on those two center ones is too tight, or the thread tension is too tight overall, then you end up pulling the shuttle thread into the pages, and the shuttle thread would actually come out of these two needles. So the thread tension cannot be too tight, but the same token, it cannot be too loose. If it's too loose, you're going to have one problem with the sewing. Like, I got to loosen this one up a little bit. You should be able to see two little pigs here. And of course you don't want them too big, but by the same token you don't want them to disappear altogether, because that is what's holding these two needles. I mean, if you put glue in here, threads, then, which I don't have, then that's going to help a lot. And the glue that's used on there is like a wallpaper paste. But the thing with that is that once you put the book together with that, very difficult to take apart. That's what it looks like. Now I do like a double loop over here. Let's okay, you see the way it's going around? And the same thing over there. And here.